It is November 30th of 2023, and I think the Alex Pereira versus Isreal Adesanya saga's over. I think it's done. I don't think we'll ever see the trilogy fight. I think it's officially run its course, and it ended in the least likely way that I think we all thought it was going to end. It ended with Alex Pereira not only winning the middleweight title, but winning the belt that Israel always wanted to win, the light heavyweight belt. Mostly because he had beef with John Jones, and he wanted the light heavyweight belt because that was the belt that John Jones held. There's a whole backstory there, but we're not going to cover that yet. But what I want to talk about is the brief history of this. Because how this started is almost poetic how this has turned out. Because how this started is, as you know, Alex Pereira has 2 wins over Isreal Adesanya in kickboxing. In all honesty, it didn't really matter. It was the UFC that convinced us as the MMA fans that it mattered. Because I think the main reason why Alex Pereira was even brought into the UFC to begin with was because of Isreal Adesanya. It was because the Jan Blachowicz versus Israel fight, I believe it was right after that Pereira was signed, did not sell well for a double champion fight. That's one thing that, whenever the UFC wants to talk about Isreal Adesanya, the biggest value that Israel brought as a champion, that really cannot be understated, is as a champion, he was extremely active. As a champion, he was. There are other fighters that are more active than him, but as a champion, he was extremely active. He did not pull great pay-per-view numbers most of the time. Now, people are going to say, he sold 700,000 here, 700,000 there, 800,000 there. Jan Blachowicz did not sell very well. Marvin Vettori did not do well. And Jared Cannonier did not do well. So they bring in Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira was supposed to be the foil for Isreal Adesanya. There's some fighters in the UFC, John Jones is one of them, that they're seen as so dominant in their respective divisions that people view them as fighting as, okay, I'll just find out what happens the next day on ESPN, or maybe I'll just watch a stream that's on the internet. The fighters that end up getting the most views are the people that end up bringing the most entertainment value. That's one reason Conor was able to get the most pay-per-view numbers, just because it's not that he was the best, it's because he brought the most to the show. Israel, even at its height, didn't quite get that. So that's why Pereira was brought. Fast-tracked him to the title, and I'm a Pereira fan, and you would call me an Adesanya hater, especially if you see my TikTok videos. You know I hate on Adesanya quite a bit. But even I have to admit, Pereira was fast-tracked because of his connection to Adesanya. Pereira was made famous the same way Khabib was made famous by Conor McGregor. As a Pereira fan, I have to thank Adesanya for bringing Alex Pereira to the UFC. And even Alex will thank Adesanya for that. He was in a bar. He was drunk. It was Adesanya going on, I don't even know if it was a post-fight presser, but it was an interview that he gave, and I'm going to put it in this video. He said something to the effect of, Alex Pereira is going to be that guy in a bar that's going to look at the television and say, I beat that guy one time.
And even the same guy now he watches all my fights, and every time I fight, like clockwork, he'll try and put something out like, I beat this guy. But I've never ever watched any of his fights, ever. So at the end of the day, no one knows who the he is, and he's gonna be that guy when I'm world champion, when I'm a legend. He's gonna be at some pub, talking some shit about, I beat that guy one time.
Never mind, he beat him twice. I understand that the first fight was close, but you don't get points for having a close fight. You get points for winning the fight. Alex Pereira has 2 wins over you. And then Pereira gets motivated by this, gets sober, goes back into MMA at that point. Lost. His first MMA fight, he looked terrible because he didn't know how to grapple. Gets with Glover Teixeira. trains how to fight. I know there's some connection to Anderson Silva that he had, and Pereira cornered Anderson Silva when Anderson Silva fought Adesanya, but that didn't come into effect until the interview that Adesanya gave. Pereira runs through the middleweight division, fights killers. I know Bruno Silva's a meh. Son Strickland later became champion. We didn't know how good he was at that point. Beats the second best middleweight of all time in Adesanya. And then Adesanya beats him, and all of a sudden the trilogy, the UFC doesn't want it. And listen, now that it's past and the saga is over, the reason why the trilogy was not made, in my mind, is because Pereira served his purpose. His purpose was to generate hype and pay-per-views for the middleweight division. They were looking for an excuse to, if he loses, to get rid of him. If he lost, they were going to make him fight somebody like Robert Whittaker, a stylistic nightmare matchup for him. But because he won, they can do the immediate rematch. If they did a trilogy fight, which they could have done, and I think at this point they wished they could have done, and if Pereira beats Adesanya, now we're looking at a situation where Pereira is the champion and Adesanya has to win 1 to 2 fights to get that immediate rematch. So Pereira goes up. They give him Jan Blachowicz. I still don't know who the UFC wanted to win, because if Jan beats Pereira, then it makes Israel look good. But Pereira beats Jan Blachowicz. And I think at that point they're like, okay, if we can get Pereira to win the light heavyweight belt, we can create a super fight for UFC 296, or maybe even UFC 300, between Alex Pereira for the light heavyweight belt and Isreal Adesanya for the middleweight belt. But one thing had to fall into place. Israel had to stay the middleweight champion. And this is where things got messed up. Because Israel, now a lot of people know this, Israel knew he was going to be fighting in Australia 3 months before he had an opponent. That is true. There are articles written on that. Israel knew he was going to be fighting in Australia. It was between Robert Whittaker and Dricus du Plessis. That was the number 1 contenders match. Robert Whittaker was the favorite. The UFC thought Robert was going to win. That's why the fight was in Australia to begin with. But Dricus upsets the world, TKOs Robert Whittaker, and demonstrates cardio for the first time in his entire career. And then the UFC is like, okay, we can hype up this fight. We can salvage this. Dricus du Plessis versus Isreal Adesanya. You have the awkward, in-cage verbal assault that Adesanya decided to do. We can hype this up, build a promo out of it. Then Dricus says, my hand's broken. I cannot fight on, wasn't it 4 weeks' notice? And the UFC was pissed, okay? You have Dana White saying that Dricus du Plessis didn't prove that he had the championship mentality. You had the head coach of Isreal Adesanya saying that because Dricus pulled out, he should never be able to fight for a belt again. Everybody in my gym would fight injured, which is kind of hilarious because ever since then, Kai Kara France, Dan Hooker are all injured, and Isreal Adesanya is dealing with mental problems, which isn't funny, but it's poetic. And we're going to get to more of the poetic nature of this. So, Dricus du Plessis doesn't want to fight because broke his hand, obviously. Call up Son Strickland. If you're anything like me, you thought Isreal Adesanya was going to tune up Son Strickland. Most people on YouTube was saying Isreal Adesanya is going to get a switch kick, head kick KO in the 3rd round. And then Son Strickland wins the fight. That destroyed this entire thing. Pereira wins the belt against Yuri Prochazka. And then Alex Pereira calls for Isreal Adesanya. And in my mind, that was the ultimate charity reaching out of the hand of Alex Pereira. People looked at that as a petty thing that Pereira did. And to be fair, his coach did a real terrible job of translating him and completely missed out on what he was trying to say. But Pereira was actually thanking Adesanya and was offering him the chance to be motivated and fight me for the trilogy fight for the light heavyweight belt. And I almost guarantee you, I don't think they'll ever say it, but I almost guarantee you that Adesanya received a text from somebody asking if he would like this fight. Because in the post-fight presser, Dana White completely dismantles this idea and almost like ridicules Alex Pereira for making this call out. When, let's be real here, if Adesanya was like, yes, I will fight you for the light heavyweight belt, they would have made that fight in a heartbeat. But it didn't happen. Isreal Adesanya posted as a joke to promote some weird business he's promoting, that he was going to fight Alex Pereira on the UFC 298. Honestly, it wasn't like... That got me hyped. I wanted to watch you fight Pereira. I want to see you fight Pereira because I'm an Israel hater. If you beat Pereira, understand that I almost have to get behind you. But I think Pereira would have done him really dirty at 205, and I think that's one reason why Adesanya doesn't want the smoke. Because the gaslighting in the Adesanya fan base is insane. It's like, okay, Pereira needs to stop calling for Adesanya. It's getting weird here. He beat you once, you need to let it go. Bro, Pereira started the domino effect that concluded with Adesanya losing the belt and now saying he won't fight until 2027. I am going to tell you this right now. If that is true and Adesanya's not coming back until 2027, his two choices are either he goes up to light heavyweight, a fresh division, fresh start, or he comes over to middleweight and gets destroyed. Because you have people like Bo Nickel and Khamzat Chimaev that are going to be camping out at that division who are younger than you and stylistically can beat you. The moment you come back, they're going to look at you like a paycheck with legs. At least if you go up to light heavyweight, these are, let's be real here, less athletic athletes that are not used to fighting somebody like you. Pereira won the belt against Jan Blachowicz and Yuri Prohaska. And then Pereira, like this is up till nowadays, Pereira offers to train Adesanya. And this is where I think it ended, because people accused Pereira of punching down. That is the ultimate insult. The second best middleweight of all time is being defended by his fans, who are saying that Pereira is punching down because he won 2 belts in 2 years. So, although you're not saying it, what you are saying is, by your own fan base, is Pereira is punching down to you. Pereira is above you now. In 2 years, that's what he was able to do. I don't believe that. I think if you do an all-time pound-for-pound list, Adesanya is 1 step above Pereira because of his long stretch of dominance at middleweight. Even I have to give him, maybe not dominance, but wins at middleweight. If Pereira gets like 3 title defenses at light heavyweight, fine, put him above. But as of right now, I thought Adesanya was above him. That's not true. And now Pereira is asking for Magomed. You go from asking for a super fight with Isreal Adesanya, being offered the fight with Jamal Hill, who beat Glover Teixeira, your mentor, and you want to fight Magomed, the dude who's had 3 #1 contenders matches that he has flunked. There's no other way to say it. What I mean by 3 is he's going to be fighting Johnny Walker again. So, Jan Blachowicz was supposed to be a #1 contenders match. Arguably lost that. Fought Johnny Walker. Should have been DQ'd. I don't understand why it was ruled a no contest if Piotr Jan gets DQ'd if he does the exact same thing to Aljamain. But whatever. And now we're going to do it again. And Pereira wants to fight you now. Adesanya was replaced by Magomed. This beef's over. This is day 3 of making MMA content to get to 10,000. If you have an idea or you have any ideas to improve this content, I'm learning every single day. And if you enjoy my videos, please don't be afraid to like, subscribe, share. You know the drill. Adios, guys. It means a lot to me.